Oh man, ya woman, oh man, ya mama, yenyi baby ako, wata ya wareni, wonsom, wanyinyi pa, asa tipa wofio ye, yamo yembera ye, ebe ya.
My name is Nashika Caesar. I work with City FM and City TV. Now my question, in terms of job creation, can you give us specific numbers of jobs that have been created in the sector so far? And then the Deputy Minister, Mr. Robert Ahon-Kalensi, mentioned on City sometime back that out of the 181 factories under the One District, One Factory project, 114 will be operational before the end of 2019 now. Can you please confirm these?
My name is Eric. I work with Star FM. Now, last year, the Trades Ministry gave some 5 pointers as measures for the textile industry. Key amongst them was a tax stamp, port restriction on textiles, and then a tax force on the Ghanaian market. Particularly for the tax stamp, the Coalition of Textile Workers are raising concerns as that is yet to come into force. So, want to know whether that policy, the tax stamp for textiles, when is it coming into force and why the delay? And also the restriction on the import out of.
You're a gentleman. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Melvin from Daily Guide. I'm interested in knowing, as a state, how much are we giving away in terms of tax incentives, and tax holidays to the companies that are taking up the 1D1F policy, and in the growth aspect that we are talking about. What sort of growth are we talking about under the 1D1F? Is it an accelerated growth? Is it an inclusive growth? Is it a growth that we can feel in our pockets as a people, or one that the company owners are feeling? Thank you.
My name is Blessed Sugan. I work with Class FM. Honorable Minister, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, has issued a policy statement on the continental free trade area. They claim that any decision by Ghana to proceed with such an agreement will affect earnings and employment opportunities in some sectors of our economy. And that's what the IMF is saying about the continental free trade area. In fact, it will affect earnings and employment opportunities in some sectors of the economy. And when you look at our counterparts, for instance, Nigeria, they are dragging their feet in going ahead, for instance, to ratify the free trade agreement. Why is Ghana pursuing an agenda which many consider will just give us accolades on the international front and end up killing our local businesses? Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if I miss out on any point, please draw me back. So, the first questioner was quoting my colleague, the Deputy Minister, and I didn't hear the number. What did you say? 140? 114. Well, we passed that already. If you look at the numbers that I presented, 79 already are operational, correct? So 79. And then you have 56, the small-scale processing factories. Is that correct? So you add that. Then you have the 5 common user facilities. And you have the pipeline, the 33 companies in the pipeline with the banks that are. So that already, if my calculation is right, is over 160. So basically, the numbers even go beyond that. And that's why, I decided that let's give the breakdown. Because if you give the breakdown, it is there for you to know which ones are under construction, which ones are operational. So, madam, that's the answer. How many job creation? Well, I will not give a specific here because, as I said, these are private sector promotions and government facilitates. So once we consolidate the employment statistics from all the companies, the business plans, Then I don't want to you throw numbers around. Next time, you say, my friend, you said that this, when in actual fact, you should not be speaking on behalf of the provider. These are not government enterprises. We can collect them once they give us, and even if they give us the employment status, we want to audit it, because this is not about politics. Because if you are talking about job creation and the jobs are not there, people will know. But these are not state enterprise where you determine, on a case by case how many people are employed. So at the appropriate time, when the private sector, the ballers, and we have audited the employment statistics, we will throw that out. And then the next one was textile industry, the tax stamps. The tax stamps are basically coming from a contractor, and we've negotiated that. But the Ministry of Finance, please remember that we are only facilitating and supporting the sector. It's the Ministry of Finance that has responsibility for the issuance of these tax stamps. But we are working very closely with the Ministry of Finance. And that is why you no longer hear too much noise coming from the textile sector, because they know that things are already happening. And so that's the answer. And then the tax incentives, the cost. I did mention that, yes, incentives, there are costs to every incentive. But the incentives are a means to an end. The incentives are a means to an end. And so if, for example, you want to talk about inclusive, you have such a comprehensive program. It's not just even the job creation, but look at the spread. Look at all the kinds of things that we are talking about. How more inclusive can you be than the nature, the expansive nature of this program? And because also it's the private sector that is at the center of this. It is not government allocating jobs to people, So I hope you get what I'm saying. That's the whole reason for the design of these projects. And maybe let me also mention that when people start quoting what is happening in other countries, do you know the type of incentives that are offered for them to be, even in terms of export subsidies, for them to compete on the export market? You have no idea. So sometimes let us be also circumspect about giving the impression that all these countries that are basically at the forefront of development, that they provide even more incentives than the developing countries. Said that we don't have money to afford these incentives. Otherwise, we even do more. Then the CFTA, I'm surprised, and I don't have access to what you are quoting. But if the IMF is saying that the CFTA is going to cause a major challenge for us in terms of job creation, for me, it doesn't add up. This is going to be the single most important stimulus for investment in Africa, because everybody is targeting the African market. But if the investor knows that by locating in an African country, he can export duty-free, quota-free, well, he will bring the investment to the country. So how could that be a disincentive in terms of employment creation? Please check your facts, or ask the IMF to check their facts. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Please put it
Okay,
through.
thank you very much. My name is Samuel Opoku. I'm from Accra FM. And we would like to know, you made mention on the existing companies that the ministry supports in building the One District One Factory. Want to know the criteria that the ministry used in selecting those companies, or what qualifies a company, existing company, to be supported in this 1D1F. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My name is Justice. I work with the Xinhua News Agency of China. Honorable Minister, you mentioned that some Chinese banks, you are working with some Chinese banks who are ready to support the 1D1F program with about $400 million. We would like to know which particular banks they are, and then when you expect these, the financial support to be delivered.
Thank you very much. My name is Ernest Mino. I work with Joy News. My question is on the Commander Sugar Factory. We have been there a number of times. We've done reports. We've spoken to the people. They are willing and eager to work, and I'm talking about the sugarcane plantation, to provide, the resource that we need to get the factory back on stream. Mr. Minister, you were in Parliament a few weeks ago to talk about some evaluation you've done of the company to be acquired by an investor, and that hopefully the company will be revamped and will get back on stream. The minority of the view that the valuation you did was actually a devaluation, and that after 3 years, the company, with all that was invested by the previous administration, shouldn't cost the figure you quoted. Would want to know how you came by that, if there's any explanation, and what is the assurance that the Komenda Sugar Factory would actually come back on stream for the people to get jobs and for their plantations?
My name is Nana Poku from Daily Searchlight. You did mention that some automobile companies are coming to set up their own businesses in Ghana. And some people in this country are saying that we have already existing automobile company by Apostle Kojo Safo. What are you going to do to him so that he also expands his business and employ Ghanaians, because he is in the automobile industry? Then my second question, if you are a graduate from school and you want to start up your business in the one sector, what steps must you take? Who must you see? Because for all you know, you don't have any business acumen. And besides, they say bring business plan. And very expensive. Sometimes when you contact people, in the range of about millions of Ghana cedis. So what do we do as a starter from the university or tertiary institution? Thank you.
Okay, my name is Shika from City FM, City TV. I want to know how soon the ministry foresees the 1D1F project translating into a reduction of goods we export into the country.
We import into the country. We import into the country.
Imports, yeah. We import into the country. Thank you.
Okay, Eric with Star FM. The bit about the tax stamp, the minister during his answer, I didn't quite get. You said you've contacted a contractor who's seen to its coming into being, but I want to know whether there are any timelines with regards to this contractor and when he's bringing in the tax stamp. And then my final question will be the state of the advertising bill. We know the onset of rains. I think early this year, billboards, when it rained, billboard fell on certain individuals in some parts of Kumasi, and the advertising bill is supposed to sanitize the advertising space and all that. So how soon is this advertising bill coming into force?
So the first question was in respect of the criteria for the 1D1F companies. Number one, obviously, is location. But I need to qualify this. In terms of branding, we've been talking about one district, one factory, and we've also given a clear indication that our interest is to bring industry to the doorsteps of the average Ghanaian in the rural communities. But it does not exclude peri-urban centers, because they are also districts or municipalities. So in that regard, location, obviously, our preference is in the rural districts, but it does not exclude metropolitan centers. So that's number one. Number two is potential for job creation. It does not mean that we will grade them only on the basis of job creation, but it's an important criteria for us. In some communities, a small plant may create only a few jobs, but within the context of that community, it is still adequate for us to consider the company. So it's on a case-by-case basis, but job creation is important. Contribution to export revenue. As much as possible, we are trying to identify projects or enterprises that can help improve our export revenue capacity. And by extension, we are also looking for import substitution companies. So we have a list of all imports that come into the country. We are looking at those ones that can easily be replaced, as it were, through the 1D, 1F. So that's another consideration. And then obviously, in terms of adding value to the natural resource endowment of a particular district. So that's the criteria. If you're already in existence and you fulfill these criteria, why not? It's a low-hanging fruit, and we'll work with you. Now, which banks, so that's the second question, which banks are involved in the Chinese facility to support 1D1F? Again, this is all private sector interventions, both from the local point of view and the foreign. This is not Chinese government. These are financial institutions, private financial institutions in China, even if they are state-owned. So they themselves have identified banks that they want to work with. Ordinarily, I should not be mentioning the banks, but I think it is useful also for people to know. So, for example, GCB, Exim Bank, EcoBank, Stanbic, because they have to be able to determine or define the strength of the balance sheet of the company, of the bank, because they are lending to the local bank for the local bank to on-lend to the 1D1F promoters. So the risk attendant to the project is first on the local bank. So if you don't have a strong balance sheet, it's not likely that they will work with you. But beyond the Chinese facility, we have many other banks, that's local banks, that we are working with. And the Chinese facility is only one, I would say, component of the financing portfolio for 1D1F. Now, Commander, you're absolutely right. I do not just issue a statement, an update to Parliament. Subsequently, I also put out a response to some of the media reports coming out on Commander. And I want to wait for one thing to happen. Those who are talking, they will stop talking. You go and build a factory, $35 million. That's the valuation. Because it's very easy for us to understand. You borrow 35 million, so the valuation of the company, obviously, which has to be close to 35 million. Now, even those who were bidding at the time that the previous government was trying to, and that's another thing we have to correct. I heard people saying that, oh, the NDC never attempted to, sell and offload it. They commissioned the factory in May. Within 2 months, they were already selling the factory. They had recruited a transaction advisor to offload 70% of their interest. And the evidence is clear. Those who were even bidding 2 months after that, go and look at the figures they were quoting. Go and look at the figures they were quoting to buy a new factory. And even the one who was supposed to have won the bid, later on the man came and said, oh, the factory is not worth the amount that and he thought that they were going to use that money to recapitalize the business and not to buy and pay for the factory. Subsequently, all the work that has been done and the people who have expressed interest in Commander have said that that factory cannot cost 35 million. And right from that time, we've issued a request for, how do you call this, a forensic audit. Now, because of what has come up, I've asked them to accelerate work on the forensic audit. And those who have to answer for how a $35 million facility used to acquire equipment, now suddenly people are quoting and the 12 million and, sometimes when you hear some of the quotes, you actually be shocked. So people have to come and explain. You have collected money, state money, and then you've built a factory. Even if you use normal depreciation and normal straight line depreciation, even for 5-10 years, it will not devalue by that. So, my brother, let's wait till the forensic audit comes out. People have to answer. 35 million, everybody who comes is saying that this thing cannot cost 35 million. So where did that, the valuation, the value now, how do we account for that? So that's what and we've put out a statement to that. And remember, this is not about government doing the valuation. There's a transaction advisor, an international company, Pricewaterhouse, that has been involved in this valuation. So at the appropriate time, I mean, they have issued the last valuation that they authorized, because 35 million, because of the reports that were coming out. I said, no, nobody, you cannot have a situation where everybody is saying that this thing cannot cost 35 million. So Pricewaterhouse, do another independent valuation. The valuation was $12 million. And it is consistent with the work that my deputy and a technical team, independent technical team, also did. It was around almost the same figure. So the matter will come up for further discussion. Then Kantanka. I think that for me, the real value of this new policy thrust on the automobile sector is not just waiting for the big boys to come from outside Ghana to invest. It is really for Kantanka. And it's unfortunate that he has had to go through this period of trial, you know. But now that you have a government that appreciates the efforts of local companies, we have put in a policy to make sure that Kantanka not only survives, but will start exporting under this continental free trade area to other African countries. That is what it is. So they are going to be the biggest beneficiary. Of course, this is a globally competitive industry. So would you necessarily, let's say, deny foreign investors who want to come into this? And one thing I want to establish, you know, everything produced in Ghana has a premium value, at least in Africa. You know this. When we used to produce Volta corned beef in Ghana, those of you who are old enough to remember Volta corned beef, people would buy Volta corned beef even ahead of buying Exeter, which is globally acclaimed as a market leader. So Ghana, with all our challenges, and Professor Dodu, Executive Director of Ghana Standards, he's even tightening the thing more, you know. So I'm very confident that when we talk about industrial transformation, we already have the brand recognition. And you see, when the cars start rolling out from Ghana, it will not be just made in Ghana. It will compete with any other of these brands globally. So I think that Apostle Safo, the Kantanka brand, you see what benefits they will derive from this. Tax stamps. The gentleman wanted to know, he still wanted to know about it. As I said, we don't issue tax stamps. The ministry does not. It is issued by the Ministry of Finance, and I don't want to come and be making statements, you know. I think it's only fair that once you are working with the Ministry of Finance, and I'm aware that they are actively working on it, and the textile companies themselves are involved. So I think that once it is completed, they will start rolling out the tax stamps. Advertising bill, I'm pleased to announce that the draft is ready. It's long overdue, but we've reviewed it. It's ready now to go to a cabinet for approval and then to Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you to the Ministry of Trade and Industry and all their representatives from their various agencies and departments for joining us today and sharing with us their key achievements sharing with us information that Ghanaians have been asking lots of questions about. I'm very certain that our able media persons here with us today will ably share the credible, reliable information that they've had access to today, right from the minister himself. Luckily enough, there were diagrams and there were figures, and as we keep saying, figures and diagrams do not lie. They have a lot of information to refer to be able to report credibly. We are grateful for your time, for your sacrifice, and for everything that you put in to be able to be here, to participate and to make the program a success.